może zacznę od przedstawienia się. Nazywam się Izabela Szczepańska i moja rola na tym spotkaniu jest najmniejsza. To znaczy jestem głównie tutaj moderatorem, dbam tutaj o kwestie techniczne, a głównym gościem naszego spotkania jest Tom. Hi Tom. Tom tutaj jest trochę w zastępstwie za Alexa, dyrektora szkoły Select English, który niestety trochę nam się pochorował, ale Tom na pewno świetnie spełni swoją rolę i będzie godnie reprezentował szkołę Select English. Więc za chwilkę mu oddam głos, ale zanim to nastąpi, jeszcze przedstawię jedną osobę, naszą Dorotę Rzepniewską, kierowniczkę Biura Wyjazdów Językowych. Cześć Dorotka.
Dzień dobry Państwu, dzień dobry wszystkim.
Fajnie. Cześć Dorota, cześć Tom. Więc tak, jeszcze zanim sobie przejdziemy dalej, pokrótce przedstawię nasze 3 główne punkty programu. A mianowicie, widzę jeszcze Danuta tutaj pisze do nas. Cześć Danuta, witaj. Nasza prezentacja będzie głównie składać się z 3 elementów. Pierwszy z nich to prezentacja szkoły Select English, którą poprowadzi Tom. Kolejno przejdziemy sobie do naszej pokazowej lekcji języka angielskiego i na końcu zostawimy sobie 2-3 minutki na pytania, a nawet może i dłużej na pytania od Was. Więc jeśli w trakcie prezentacji albo już teraz nawet nasuwają Wam się jakieś pytania, to taki moment na zadawanie pytań będzie na końcu. Oczywiście w trakcie również możecie je zadawać. Ja na końcu te pytania pokażę na ekranie i zarówno Dorota, jak i Tom będą starali się odpowiadać. I jeszcze jedna rzecz tutaj ode mnie, a właściwie 2 rzeczy. To głównie nasza prezentacja będzie prowadzona w języku angielskim ze względu na naszego zagranicznego gościa. I już tak przechodząc, chciałabym wspomnieć 2 słowa tylko o naszej firmie, czyli o firmie ATAS. Działamy na rynku od ponad 32 lat. Głównie specjalizujemy się w turystyce młodzieżowej i językowej. Organizujemy m.in. właśnie obozy językowe i kursy językowe za granicą i współpracujemy z renomowanymi szkołami językowymi i taką jedną z takich szkół właśnie jest szkoła Select English. I myślę, że właśnie w tym momencie przekażę głos dalej. Także Tom, the floor is yours. Good luck. Ja i Dorotka tylko się tutaj teraz na chwilkę jakby wyłączymy nasz tutaj mikrofon i kamerkę, żeby nie przeszkadzać. So Tom,
ja zobaczę później.
Perfect. Listen guys, thank you for that introduction. My name is Tom. I have worked for Select English for the last 4 or 5 years. I work for a different company that help Select run their summer schools, which is what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about myself. So I know Cambridge really well. I did my undergraduate degree at Cambridge University and then did a master's in business there as well. And I'm sure you all know Cambridge is really famous for the university. If you don't know where Cambridge is, it's about 80-90 miles north of London, so really easy to get to, and an absolutely beautiful part of England. Our school in Cambridge is called Select English. Select English has been teaching students English for the last 30 years, a little bit more, and it's a fantastic place to really come and immerse yourself in English in England for 2 weeks in the summer. Summer in England is really nice as well. Enjoy good weather, and in a little bit I'll show you some pictures of what you can hopefully expect in the summer. For now, let me just start you off with a little bit more about the school. So we're located right in the centre of Cambridge. The 2 school sites are here, if you can see my mouse, and here. And you're surrounded by the old university. Most of the buildings in the centre of Cambridge date back to the 14th, 15th century. And the university itself is 800 years old. So you're surrounded by English history and really immerse yourself in that English culture in an English city. In terms of the teaching side, Select English is a member of English UK, and it's accredited by the British Council. And at the end of the course, you get a certificate saying your language level and also that you've been on a British Council accredited course. In terms of the teaching, we have a really careful selection process of our teachers. Almost all of the teachers are native English teachers or have native proficiency. And that's a really good way to improve your English that little step further, learning from a native teacher. And the second part of the session today, we're going to look at phrasal verbs, a little mock lesson. And that'll definitely give you an idea of learning English from a native speaker. And also, as I'm sure you can tell, learning from me, listening to me now, really helping your English as well, being in England for a couple of weeks. We really pride ourselves on our accommodation as well. And we've got one of the best social programs of any language school in the whole of the UK, the States, Canada. So not only are you going to have some really excellent lessons during your 2-week course, but it should be a lot of fun, and you should meet lots of people from other countries. And you can see that here. So this is our first course, Select English Cambridge Juniors. So that's a course based right in the centre of Cambridge. And normally we have about 200 students, 180 students on that course. They come from 34 different countries. And we have really strict rules about how many students can come from each country. I don't know if you've been on summer schools in the past, but a problem that lots of summer schools have is they only have students from 1 or 2 countries. Everyone speaks their own language, whether it's Polish, whether it's Italian, and you don't actually get a chance to learn English and practice speaking your English. And that's what we really concentrate on. So you'll see here that no country accounts for more than about 15% of our students. And that means that everyone speaks English, everyone uses their English the whole time. In terms of where you'll stay, the accommodation, there are 2 options. There's residential accommodation or homestay accommodation. The residential accommodation is all within 10 minutes walk of the school. There are either our full-time boarding houses or our slightly more sort of luxurious ensuite accommodation right by the station, couple of minutes walk from the school. You have a really good residential warden. They look after you, they cook your meals, and you'll stay with about 14 or 15 other students. So it's a great chance to dive in, really make friends, really immerse yourself for those 2 weeks. The other option is homestays. Most of our homestays live in this area just here, here, and here. To give you an idea of Cambridge, I live right here, and it takes me about 25 minutes to walk all the way to the school, or about 10 minutes into the city centre. So you're still really local. And that's one of the nice things about Cambridge. It's quite a small city, and it's very safe. So it's one of the sort of wealthiest cities in the country. It's really safe to walk around when it's dark, at night, in the morning. So even if you're at the younger age, you know, if you're 14, you should feel safe, you know, just going out with your friends. A little bit about the school site. So these are the school buildings here where you have your lessons. That's my office right there. We've got 23 classrooms, and the focus is really on small class learning. So the average class size is 10 students, and the maximum class size is 12 students. In each class, we'll make sure that the nationality is mixed, and you'll be in classes with people of your level, with a teacher who's used to teaching students at that level. So again, at the heart of the experience is that use of English, really learning in the morning, improving your English, and then in the afternoon, get into all of the social activities. We've got our computer lab and our science labs. And one of the options on the course, particularly if your English level is already good, is to take our science course or our drama course, which is a little bit different. Half your lessons will be English lessons and half of them will be science, musical theatre, drama, business. You can choose which of those courses you do. And rather than just learning English, you'll be learning, those subjects in English. So particularly if you're slightly more advanced English speaker, those are great options and a really good way to begin to think about later study, particularly if you're thinking about studying abroad at a university. And on those courses, lots of the lecturers who come in teach at Cambridge University. So this is a little example timetable. Everyone has 20 hours of classes per week, and normally those are in the morning. So you'll see that you do classes from 9:30 up to 2:45 with lots of breaks in between and break between each lesson. And then we have activities in the afternoon and in the evening, and you'll go home for dinner in the meantime. You don't have to go back to your residence or your homestay for dinner. If you'd rather go out in Cambridge with your friends, that's allowed. You just need to check with the course director before. On that first Monday morning, you'll do a little placement test to make sure we got your right level of English. But we're really accommodating with that. If you think the class is too simple, you just go and speak to your teacher and they'll look at moving your level to try and make sure that you're getting the most out of the lessons. The other thing is we try and keep the lessons fun. So almost all of them are topic-based rather than just concentrating on grammar or concentrating on vocabulary. So trying to really build in useful English. Lastly, at the end of the course, you'll get a report about your progress, what you can work on, what you can take away, and hopefully that will help you improve your English even after you've left the course. So a little bit more about the residential accommodation. Most of the residential buildings look something like this little picture here. And as I said, normally about 15 students in each house. And boys and girls in each house, and try and make sure that it's a relaxed environment for you to come back, relax in the afternoons and the evenings after activities. And also all of the house managers are really good cooks, so you'll eat really well, lots of snacks. You shouldn't need to worry about getting yourself extra food. The whole point is that the residence or the homestay feels like home to you for that little 2 weeks. Their choice of rooms, you can either have a single or a twin room. If you're comfortable sharing a room with someone, it's a really great way to make a very close friend for those 2 weeks. In general, we like to pair people from different nationalities in those twin rooms. But if you are coming with a really close friend, we can request that you are in the same room, that you share a room together, or that you're at least in the same house. Moving on, looking a little bit about the social program. Over the 2 weeks, you'll have a choice of doing 80 different activities. And in general, those fall into different categories. So there's always a sports option every day, whether that's football, badminton, tennis, basketball. We're really keen on being active and seeing a bit more of the city through sport. If the weather's nice, there are brilliant outdoor swimming pools in Cambridge as well. So really try and make the most of everything that there is in the city. Always got lots of arts and crafts. We do jewelry design, t-shirt design, and again, try and make things that you can take away with you, bring back home. And then the really interesting one and the really special one about being in Cambridge, we do historical and cultural visits. Some of those involve visiting the university. So we'll look at the university colleges. You can see some of the most famous ones here along the river. And I'll try and find a bit of a photo of some of the activities. London. So there you go. Lots of the sports activities there. And these are some of the cultural trips that we do. So this is a very famous choir at King's College. They sing every every evening, really beautiful evening song. There's live Shakespeare plays every summer. And loads of fun activities as well. We understand that you're spending 2 weeks of your summer holiday with us, so a big part of it is having fun. The other big thing that we do is we do a full day trip to London in the middle weekend, and a trip to one of the smaller cities just outside Cambridge called Ely or Grantchester on the Sunday. But when we go to London, you'll see all the famous sites: Big Ben, Buckingham Palace, the London Eye, Westminster Abbey, and you'll have 4 or 5 hours to do shopping. So lots of the students will spend a bit of time on Oxford Street buying presents for their friends and family. So that's the course for students who are 14 to 17. The second course that we have for ATAS students is Colford. Colford is actually now from the ages of 10 up to 16, and that's split into 2 courses: 10-year-olds to 13-year-olds and 13-year-olds to 16-year-olds, but you're all on the same site. And particularly, you know, if you've got a younger brother, an older sister, something like that, it's a great way to be in the same place, but be on slightly different courses, which are aimed at your respective age groups. So this is Colford. Colford is about half an hour from Cambridge, set in the countryside, and the whole course is situated in this beautiful old historic house, which is now a school. So the house dates back to the 15th century, so it's about 700 years old, and we do lots of stuff in this main building, but the really nice thing is there are lots of modern facilities as well. And we have the whole site in the summer, so really safe place to come and enjoy the English countryside and enjoy all the amazing facilities. So that was the main building that I just showed you a picture here. We've got the classrooms here in the middle, and this is the accommodation block, purpose-built accommodation for students. And this is all of the sports centres. So tennis courts. This is where Tim Henman and Andy Murray learnt to play tennis. So outside of the summer, it's one of the elite tennis academies in England. And there's also an Olympic-sized swimming pool. There's a golf studio. So an absolutely amazing place to come and spend 2 weeks. Again, the nationality mix is really important for us. So we had students from 22 different countries. And again, we try and keep each country under 15%. So you'll be with students from lots of different countries. Normally on this course, because the students are slightly younger, we try and be a bit more flexible with who you share a room with as well. So if you're a bit worried about coming away, maybe it's the first time that you've been away from home, you'll be able to share a room with a friend, someone you already know, if you want to. If you don't, we'll pair you up with someone that we think you'll get on with and have similar interests with. Everyone on this course is residential, so you'll get to know everyone really well. And normally we have about 80 students on the younger course, the 10 to 13-year-old course, and about 120 students on the 13 to 16-year-old course. So these are some of the pictures of the main rooms, but we use this room as sort of course office. So there'll always be course members in here, the social organisers, who will help point you in the right direction. They're there to help you, make sure you have fun. And just like on the other course in Cambridge, we've got 20 hours of English classes per week, and those are in the morning. So those go up normally until 3 o'clock. For the younger students, your last lesson each day is more of a fun lesson. And the idea is that we're trying to take learning outside, be a bit more practical with it. And that might be preparing a play, you know, going out, doing a nature trail, doing something that involves a bit of sport, where the focus still is learning English, but in a bit more of an interactive environment. Once again, the average class size is 10 students, and the maximum that we allow in each class is 12 students. And again, we've got different levels of English. So whether you're really an elementary English speaker and this is your first time trying to immerse yourself in English, or you're an advanced speaker, we've got set classes for each of those students. These are some more of the facilities. So this is the old ballroom. At the end of the course, we have a really good party here. There's a massive cinema and theatre that we can use. The bedrooms are really nicely set up, so each student has their own study desk. Is that a question? I don't know if Dorota, can you translate that for me? Type in the translation into the chat and then I will try and answer it. So separate boys and girls houses. Twin rooms. There's 1 or 2 triple rooms, but almost all of them are twin. Every 3 or 4 rooms has a shared shower block. Really nice student common rooms. So they've got pool tables, playstations, great way to relax between lessons. And because it's a closed site and the public aren't allowed in, during the free time, you're allowed to explore this whole area by yourself. And lots of students will go off a little walk or play football by themselves during those free time periods. One of the best things about Colford is the food. So every day there's a different cooked breakfast. The lunches are really good and the evening food is really good. Try and make sure that there's a bit of different food every day. So you've got a lot of choice there. And there'll always be 2 or 3 choices of food and a salad bar where you can help yourself. There you go. There's a picture of the salad bar and some more pictures of the food. And in general, you're allowed to eat as much as you want. So, if you're like me and you like your food, you can go up a couple of times, really enjoy yourself. So a little bit more about the social program. You can see some of the pictures here, but very similar to the other social program, except that we do a lot more trips. So every 2 days, we do a separate trip. Brilliant, thank you on the question. Every 2 days we do a trip, so you're not locked at the school the whole time. So we go to one of the really famous market towns. We go to Warwick Castle and Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare was born. We're going to do a day in London. We do a full half day in Cambridge, and we also go to the seaside. So as I said, we do a trip every 2 days. And I think here, some of the pictures of the trip. So this is the market town, Bury St Edmunds. This is Warwick Castle, one of the most famous medieval castles in England. Trip to London. Some of the students will go to Madame Tussauds and see the waxworks. The full day trip to Cambridge. On all of the trips, you'll always have a tour around the city. So you'll learn some of the history, some of the culture, and you'll always have some free time to go shopping. And then on days when we don't do trips, you've got a massive range of activities to pick from as well. So 5 or 6 activities every afternoon or evening. Some of them are more relaxed, so just watching a film. Some of them are a lot more involved or a lot more active. So we have a 5-a-side football tournament. We build rockets. We have a really fun water game afternoon where we all get big super soakers and water balloons. And again, lots of other choices. So archery, rock climbing, swimming, and all of that's included. There you go. You can see me almost 10 years ago playing dodgeball. And finally, you can see the whole course here. This is our last night. And one of the really nice things is the social organizer team. So these are 7 or 8 people, normally who are 20, 22, 23. And their only job is to make sure you have fun. So they'll be on the trips with you. They'll be in the accommodation with you. And again, they're just there to make sure you enjoy yourselves. So that's a little bit about Select English. If you have questions about dates, prices, things like that, then message Dorota in the chat. If you have a question for me, far away in the chat, ideally in English, but if not, I'm sure Dorota or Isa can translate. But yeah, far away with questions. Yes, in terms of the towns in the presentation, I'm sure that Dorota can send you an information sheet for those that are already completely booked in, and that'll be Bury St Edmunds, Cambridge, Great Yarmouth, which is the seaside one, London, and I've probably forgotten one of them. But yeah, we can certainly share that information afterwards as well. Any other questions? So we have an adults program in the summer school, and that's a really good question about 18-year-olds. So the adults program is very similar to the juniors program. You have lessons in the morning and at the start of the afternoon, and there are activities in the evening. Why we have a separate course is, you may or you may not know, but the legal drinking age for alcohol in England is 18. And we often find that 18-year-olds want to do slightly more social things. They want to visit the pubs, the bars. So we try and mix that in. So you can come as an 18-year-old, but you'll be on our adults course. And I think if you'd like separate information about that, message Dorota at the end of this webinar, and she'll be able to help you out. Is that okay, Dorota?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Guys, do feel free to ask me any questions about Cambridge, about England, really anything else that you'd like to know. We good, Dorota?
Can I ask for one question? It was in Polish. Okay. Było pytanie o kursy komfort na stronie internetowej ATAS.PL. Proszę Państwa, są te kursy tak w telegraficznym w zasadzie skrócie. To są wyjazdy zorganizowane dla niewielkich grup, naszych polskich grup, z którymi wysyłamy naszych polskojęzycznych opiekunów, więc dla osób, które wyjeżdżają po raz pierwszy na takie wyjazdy językowe, są to chyba najciekawsze takie stosowane programy, ponieważ młodzież nie powinna się wtedy obawiać takiego pierwszego wyjazdu, kontaktu z językiem za granicą. Wspólny przelot, gdzie zaopiekowany jest również każdy uczestnik na tym przelocie, transfer do danej szkoły, na miejsce zakwaterowanie, na miejscu opiekun polskojęzyczny sprawuje nadzór nad naszą grupą młodzieżową. Te grupki nie są duże, bo planujemy te grupki około 10 osób, z zachowaniem oczywiście na tych kursach językowych miksu narodowościowego, bo głównym założeniem takiego wyjazdu jest jednak kontakt z językiem, z uczestnikami z innych krajów. No oczywiście tą szkołę Cambridge mamy w tej ofercie komfort. Są to wyjazdy do Cambridge dwutygodniowe w 3 terminach, z zamieszkaniem w akademiku albo u rodzin goszczących.
So there are courses all year round. For those, you have to be over a certain age, and that also depends a bit on your English level. But presuming that you're over the age of 18, if you're slightly younger than that, it's a different conversation. But if you are interested about coming during the year, it's more of a sort of standard language school setup. So more lessons. You can choose how many lessons you want. We've got some students who are a bit older who do lessons and then do some work in the afternoon or evenings. We've got some who do lots of lessons because they're trying to study for a particular IELTS level. But there is also a nice little social program every week at the school during the year. And I think if you are interested in a course outside of the summer, again, Dorota can probably give you some information about that.
Yes, of course.
Okay, guys, so the second part of this session today is just going to be talking a bit about phrasal verbs. It's going to be really helpful if for the next 20 minutes, I'm not the only one speaking. So I'd really like you to get involved in the chat. It's going to be much more interesting, and you're going to learn far more if you're willing to be involved and get yourselves involved in the chat. So right off the start, and if you can just type your answers into the chat, does anyone know what a phrasal verb is? What is a phrasal verb? Excellent, someone is typing. You're going to be my favorite student. And why I've chosen to talk about phrasal verbs? Brilliant, perfect. It's a mix of two words. Any idea what those two words are? Yeah, I know, you're exactly right. Verb and... So we always have a verb with a phrasal verb, and the other thing that we always have is a particle. A particle can mean one of two things in this case, either a preposition, I know you're exactly right with preposition, or an adverb. And phrasal verbs are really tricky in English because English people use them a lot, and just as Iona said, they have different meanings. And the quickest way to spot a native English speaker is how and when and why they use phrasal verbs. Some other languages have phrasal verbs, but in English they're used more than almost any other language. And that's because English is really a mashup of lots of different languages and cultures dating back to sort of the 11th century. So we've got some Latin in there, but also we got High French, medieval French influences, Old English influences, and German influences. And we bundle that all together. And because we have lots of different languages influencing English, it became very easy to stick words together, the verb and the preposition, still two separate words, but put them together and form a different meaning. And a really good example of that, I'm going to type it in the chat, is this one, put down. Does anyone know as a phrasal verb what that can mean? Because this is one of the tricky ones where everyone knows what put means. Put is the verb. Everyone knows what down means. Down. But when we put them together, they mean something different. So anyone know the different meanings of the phrasal verb put down? Yeah, perfect. So that's the first and one of the most common ones is basically to write something down, or to jot something down, and note it down, or to remember something. So I'm going to put it down in my notes in my head, remember it for later. Anyone know another meaning, something to do with animals? Anyone know what it would mean if I put down my dog? What would I do if I put down my dog? Someone have a guess. Okay, well, I'll give you the answer on that one. So if we put down an animal, it means to kill an animal. So an old dog we might put down if it was ill. We're going to put down the dog, and that means, you know, the vet is going to kill the dog. And that's one of the really tricky things with phrasal verbs. If you use them in the wrong scenario or the wrong part of the sentence, they can mean something completely different. Before we dive into some examples, we have different types of phrasal verbs. I don't know if anyone is a more advanced level out there, but do you know how we generally classify phrasal verbs? Anyone going to help me out? Brilliant. So the first type of classification is whether they're separable or inseparable. And separable verbs are ones where we can put something in the middle of the verb. So a good example of a separable verb is take on. And I can take something on, so I can take on the project. That means if I was taking on a business project, I accept your business, I'm going to start working on it. Or we can change the order of that, and we can take the project on. And the really tricky thing again with English is you're going to have to learn which verbs are separable and which phrasal verbs are inseparable. And that's just practice. For inseparable, we can never split that phrasal verb up. And a good example of that is look up to. Does anyone know what look up to means? Perfect. Really good, guys. Yeah, so admire or respect. I look up to my teacher. But we can't split that. We can't say, I look teacher to up. So you've got to be really careful with those verbs. And one of the real problems with phrasal verbs is native English speakers, we don't learn them from a textbook, anything like that. You know, we pick it up as we, you know, from really young age, and we learn them each separately. And to get to that native level, you are just going to have to sit down with a really long list of phrasal verbs and learn what they mean. And as an exam tip, if you're approaching an IELTS exam anytime soon, in the listening exercise, if it involves phrasal verbs, always try and listen to the phrasal verb together rather than as two separate words. So almost think of it just like in German, it's one word mashed together, and that way you're not going to get confused with different meanings. There's a second way that we define phrasal verbs, and this is a great way to begin to understand how to use them. Any guesses out there, the second way that we define phrasal verbs? Okay, so the second way that we define phrasal verbs is we call them transient verbs or intransient verbs. Does anyone know what that means? Any guesses? What's a transient phrasal verb? Perfect, Thomas. Exactly right. So a transient verb has to be about something or someone. And if we go back to that look up example, it doesn't make sense if you don't add on the something or someone. So I look up to my teacher. I look up to my colleagues. but it doesn't make sense if you just say, I look up. So I can't say, I look up that. If I say, I look up that, it means something completely different. That means to search for something. So if you don't know the object with transient verbs, you're going to have to use a different word. And in that example, I could say, I admire or I respect. So just be aware of that difference. Intransient phrasal verbs, they can stand by themselves. So a good example of that is grow up. Does anyone know what grow up means? Or we can have grew up. Yeah, to raise. Really good, Iona. Or to be raised, or something to do with maturing. Sonia, gold star. That's exactly the right word, is mature. So I might say to a child who is being naughty, you need to grow up. And that would mean you need to become more mature. Or Iona, just as you said, I might say I grew up in Singapore, and that means I was raised in Singapore. That's where I spent the early years of my life. But the thing with grow up is I can say you need to grow up, and you'll see that it's not linked to something or someone. That's intransient. Okay, so we're going to dive into some examples here, and hopefully this might work. That's a real shame. The animations on my presentation didn't pull through. Never mind though. Just one more thing about phrasal verbs. Why do people think we use phrasal verbs? Why do English people like to use phrasal verbs? And particularly as a foreign speaker, why might an English person use phrasal verbs when they're speaking to you? Yeah, Sonia, that's really nice. Could be more useful. Anyone else out there? Less formal, perfect. And there's one more that I'm looking for, although you might surprise me and think of something else. Quicker, yep, really good. Just gonna let this person finish typing. Thomas, thank you. You've contributed a lot as well. Okay, so interesting one about showing respect. Often with phrasal verbs, it's almost the opposite. We might use a phrasal verb with a child, and that's because it can be less formal and can be easier, Agatha, perfect, than explaining the word you want to say. And that's really one of the tricky things as a non-native speaker. English people might be a lot more inclined to use phrasal verbs with you because they think they're simpler. They think they're easier to understand. And actually, the problem with phrasal verbs that English people don't realize is they mean something completely different to the two words by themselves. But when you're thinking about using phrasal verbs, exactly right. So if it's a casual conversation with a friend of someone your own age, we might use a phrasal verb. If you're talking to someone younger than you or in a relaxed environment, we might use a phrasal verb. And it's a great way to show that you're an experienced English speaker. So if you're approaching more advanced IELTS with speaking elements, one of the things I really suggest is practice using phrasal verbs. The fun thing about phrasal verbs as well is because they're small words, it's quite hard to get them wrong. And the more you practice, the more natural it will seem and the closer you'll be to that sort of native level of English. So to dive in to some examples, the first one is put off. And again, these things mean different things when they're separated, but when we put off something, it basically means we delay or postpone it. it seems like we've got quite a high level of group here. So anyone help me with whether put off is inseparable or separable? Excellent. So gone for separable, perfect. And again, that's because we can put things in the middle of that before we put it off. Okay. So this is a little list of sort of the 15 most common ones. And what I would say is if you can be comfortable with all of these, you'll find understanding that first bit of English really easy. So carry on. It was difficult for Mrs. Nelson to carry on after her husband died. On this one, is carry on a transient or an intransient phrasal verb? Do we have to link it to something or someone, or can it stand by itself? I could see someone typing, believe in yourself, have a guess. You've got a 50% chance of getting it right. Okay, so carry on is intransient. We don't have to link it to something or someone. And you can almost see that in this example. It's a famous English meme poster, keep calm and carry on. And if someone was trying to push past me, I can just say carry on. Or, you know, if there was something difficult going on, again, I can just say carry on, carry on. So carry on in general is intransient, but in some examples, if we want it to mean something specific, then we do get into that transitive nature. And that, again, is where defining phrasal verbs is really difficult because what I said right at the start, they have multiple meanings. So just to run through a few other examples, we got give in. Give in means that you let someone pressure you into something. So if someone really wanted to go out drinking with me or go, spend some time somewhere that I didn't want to, I say, oh, I give in. I give up. It means I'm going to go along with it. And just like that, we have give up next. And what you'll see, lots of these phrasal verbs are similar. We often have, there's probably a group of about 15 verbs that we really use with phrasal verbs. And if you can get used to that you'll find that will make understanding them a lot easier. And alongside the verb, there's also about 5 or 6 really common prepositions that we use with them. You see we've got up, on, after, down, off, and if you can get used to those as well, you'll really find it easier to start understanding phrasal verbs. So you've got cool off, that means to cancel. We've got look after, which means to take care of someone, to watch them. You've got pull through, which means to recover from an illness. He pulled through the injury. Put up with, that's a good example of not complaining or dealing with a hard situation. And just because I don't want to take up too much of your time and leave some questions at the end, my favorite one, and if you come join us this summer, if you get to know a particular boy or girl particularly well, at the end of your 2-week course, you might have to break up. And break up is almost always used with a romantic relationship. And that means that the relationship has ended. And again, we can see that this verb is separable. You can put words in the middle of it. But almost always it needs to be linked to something. So when we say break up, we're talking about specific people. Excellent, guys. That was just a small introduction to phrasal verbs. Big shout out to Iona, Agata, Thomas, Sonia. Thanks for chipping in. Really impressed with your guys' knowledge. I think we're going to take a few more questions now. If you have any questions, type away. Any questions about England, English, any specific questions about the course, please ask me. If you're not confident with your English, Dorota can translate. Any specific questions or anything about ATAS, prices, dates, feel free to type in Polish and Dorota should be able to step in and help out. Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. Awesome, guys. One of the really good tips from one of my old students was, phrasal verbs are hard to practice because you may not be able to spend much time with native speakers. And a great way to practice phrasal verbs is just to watch some English television, American television, and just write down every phrasal verb you come across. And if you watch with English subtitles on, you'll really see those phrasal verbs pop up. Because as I said, you'll get very used to noticing which verb is used and which preposition is used. And almost always, if a preposition like down, up is used in a normal conversation, you can be pretty sure that that's going to be a phrasal verb. Because unless I'm giving you directions or asking you to move an object and I'm saying down, on, up, we're probably using a phrasal verb. And if you can get used to those prepositions, you'll be able to spot that it's a phrasal verb and then try and view it as, a combined word together. And that's particularly important for separable phrasal verbs, actually, where it can be harder to spot them because you got a bit of the sentence in between.
Okay, Tom, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your time. Jeśli pojawią się jakieś pytania jeszcze, to zachęcamy. Ja w międzyczasie tylko powiem tyle, że jeśli komuś spodobała się oferta szkoły Select English, to serdecznie zapraszamy na naszą stronę KURSY.ATAS.PL, gdzie między innymi możecie znaleźć ofertę tej szkoły, ale nie tylko tej szkoły. Na tej stronie znajdziecie również zarówno oferty wakacyjne, kursów wakacyjnych, jak również kursów odbywających się w przeciągu całego roku. I mamy, podobnie jak szkoła, tutaj Select English, ofertę kursów dla dzieci, młodzieży, dorosłych. Bardzo Was zachęcamy do kontaktu z naszymi doradcami. Między innymi Dorota pewnie będzie się z Wami kontaktować, gdyby taki kontakt się pojawił, gdyż właśnie Dorota i też inne osoby z naszej firmy doradzą, podpowiedzą, jaka oferta, jaki kurs, jaka szkoła jest odpowiednia dla Was. Tak więc bardzo zachęcamy do kontaktu pod adresem kursy@atas.pl. Jeśli jeszcze, tak jak powiedziałam, jeszcze pojawią się jakieś pytania, to bardzo, bardzo zachęcamy do zadawania. Jest to ten moment. Jeśli nie, albo pojawią się jakieś pytania po naszym spotkaniu, to również zachęcamy do kontaktu. Z miłą chęcią odpowiemy na wszystko. I ja jeszcze tylko dodam, że jutro będę wysyłać do każdej osoby zapisanej na dzisiejsze wydarzenia nagranie z dzisiejszego spotkania. Tak więc jeśli ktoś nie mógł uczestniczyć w dzisiejszym spotkaniu, może sobie takie nagranie obejrzeć w dniu jutrzejszym, albo te osoby, które z nami były, bardzo dziękujemy za udział. mogą sobie odtworzyć i wrócić do pewnych momentów tego spotkania. Więc wydaje mi się, że chyba to tyle. Nie widzę, żeby ktoś pisał na naszym czacie, więc chyba jest ten moment, kiedy zbliżamy się ku końcowi. Zgadza się? Okej, tak mi się wydaje. Więc bardzo dziękujemy raz jeszcze. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
E,
Dziękujemy też Państwu za udział i zapraszamy serdecznie do nas.
Tak, bardzo dziękujemy. Do widzenia, cześć, dobranoc.
Do widzenia, dobranoc.